We're going to jump into our agenda here. We want to welcome those that are new. This is a standing meeting of our CISA, our Sensitive Information Sharing Environment GIS Committee. And we use this time slot also to invite our federal partners, state partners, and so forth in to hear about, I think, is one of the most innovative team projects that at least I've ever been involved in. So for many that may not know, the GIS Committee has been working on ways to vet information, to categorize it as operational readiness level 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1 is ready to go. It meets the criteria for reliable data source, data set, and it's categorized as a 1 or a 2. Category 3, 4 is kind of, you can use it, but it's at your own risk. It could not be as reliable or crowdsourced, or it's research data. But so the CISA has been organizing the data, and the tool you're going to be briefed on right now is leveraging that data into a real operational mechanism that a driver or a transportation planner can use to actually get somewhere amidst the COVID ocean of restrictions and curfews and changes. It's been really crazy, and I think it's got a really bright future ahead of it. This I won't go into all of it right now. We'll jump into our webinar. So I'm going to introduce Laura Johnson. Laura Johnson is working with us to handle our events, and she's going to facilitate the discussion around this capability. So Laura, I'll let you take it from here, and I'll pull up your slides. So give me just a second here.
Sure. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
And Tom, do you have record going?
Yes. Oh yeah. Before I forget, let me do one little thing here. Let me turn on my screen. There we go. So, just a couple of heads up here, real quick. Let me switch on here.
Hey, Tom, can you hear me, Nancy Pomerleau?
Yes, Nancy, welcome. We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted you to know I tried to dial into your webinar, but its date is shown as Friday, May 22nd. So I'm just on the phone.
Oh, interesting. Not sure what happened there. Okay. Okay. So let me welcome everybody. This webinar is being conducted by the All Hazards Consortium, formed in 2005, a public-private operational partnership organization that helps industry solve problems with government, right? So this webinar is being recorded, and it'll be made available to all registrants and partners to post online as they see fit. If you object for the recording, just please disconnect now. Everything on here is open source information to be discussed, nothing proprietary or sensitive by design. This tool meets DHS process and policy requirements and was approved for public release on May 5th, and I think press releases were issued shortly thereafter. All attendees are usually muted, but for this work group meeting, most of you are unmuted. So if you got questions, you can submit on the text box, or you can, at the end, we can open it up for questions. So we want to thank everybody for attending today. With this, I want to introduce Laura Johnson. Laura, I'm going to pull up your slides real quick, and I'll turn it over to you. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. You stole all my thunder, by the way, Tom.
Sorry.
That's everything I was going to say, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody. Today's webinar focuses on the strategy of the CRA tool, which is the Commercial Routing Assistance Tool. As Tom mentioned, this tool was created by Idaho National Lab with support of DHS CISA. And today we're going to talk about strategies of the tool. What are the capabilities of the tool? How is it going to benefit this marketplace? And we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. Next slide, Tom. So, yeah. Let me introduce our panelists for today. We have Dave Wilkinson from DHS CISA, Greg McShane, also from DHS CISA, and Ali Gagnon from Idaho National Labs. So we're going to run a series of questions for our panelists today. And our first question, Tom, deals with the overall issue. So I'm going to ask our panelists just to take a minute to introduce themselves, but also move it right into the first question of describing the industry challenges that were occurring that led to why a new transportation app needed to be developed. So Dave, if we can start with you.
Yeah, so first, thanks for letting me join this call. I greatly appreciate it. This has been a fun road for the last, I don't know, month and a half, Tom, on designing and developing and trying to really push this thing out. All but about 5 days of that have been trying to push this thing out because the design actually happened very, very rapidly. But the basic problem, the solution in wait, as I like to say, was we needed a way, and have always needed a way, to be able to show commercial and independent truckers where all the restrictions are for any given incident, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's COVID as today. Everybody has a problem. They don't want to take risk before they turn the keys. In knowing whether they're going to be able to get a weight waiver or get a hours driving waiver as they move heavy equipment, oversized equipment from one part of the country to an affected part of the country. During COVID, it just became such a global issue that we were finally able to get everybody together at the right time, at the right place, in order to come up with a solution that remarkably proved very easily to institute. So from my perspective, that's kind of what the underlying challenge was being able to visualize where all of these restrictions and waivers existed, something we had not done before.
Thanks, David. Would you mind just taking a few seconds to introduce yourself and tell us what you do over at CISA?
So Dave Wilkinson, I am the Deputy Associate Director for Operations. I run the Operations Center, which includes our Emergency Response Operations section, which is ESF 14 and 2. If you're not familiar with those, they're the emergency support functions. Number 2 is communications. Number 14 is cross-sector critical infrastructure, business reconstitution type things. And we do that in direct support of FEMA whenever a national disaster is declared. I'm a career Marine Corps colonel, retired about 10 years ago. Used to have the luxury of being able to fly airplanes, and that's part of where we got the idea for this thing was that experience of being able to use flight planning software and seeing all the restrictions and weather and everything else along the route of flight before you ever took off. So that's who I am, and again, I'm happy to be here, and I think this has been a remarkable partnership, years in the making. So I know there's a follow-on question about how quickly this happened or something to that effect. It seems like it happened quickly, but really Tom has been working this issue in some way, shape, or form, building the coalitions necessary to set conditions for this to occur rapidly once everybody was in the right spot.
Okay, thanks so much, Dave. Greg, I know you work very closely with Dave, but if you just take a minute to introduce yourself and just let us know if you have anything you'd like to add. But Dave's answer to this was very cohesive, but if you have anything you want to add to question number 1.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Hey, Greg McShane here. I've been with CISA for going on 14 years, particularly in former, the operations end of it. I support more on the technical and facility side. So anything IT or facilities related, build outs, IT, software, the capabilities that support an operational environment, I've been involved in. And Dave hit it really on the head. There are a lot of things that we do that supported it, the capabilities there. But one of the great elements of working is the public-private sector partnerships we have. And with the All Hazards Consortium, pulling in the right people from Idaho National Labs, this really kind of provided the capability and the right, call it recipe, to implement the capability like this. We've always taken that use case approach to the challenges in the industry, whether it's a supply chain issue, lodging, pre-staging, fiber cuts, fuel availability, restoration. Those types of things have always been a challenge, particularly during a response or recovery to a hurricane or an event. That has been our approach in chasing down the solutions to help remedy those problems and challenges. So it's those operational challenges and problems that we've had in implementing capability to support. Back to you, Laura.
All right, Greg, thanks so much. And finally, we're so happy to have Ollie Gagnon with us today with Idaho National Lab. Ollie, if you could take a minute to introduce yourself and let us know how this app came to be.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to everybody. Pleasure to be here. Ollie Gagnon with Idaho National Lab as the Chief Strategist and Relationship Manager. And I'm also the primary relationship manager from INL to CISA. I've been with the lab for a couple of years now, 2018, and actually before that, I spent 14 years in the organization that was former, prior to CISA becoming an operational component. And before that, 23 years Air Force. Our role with Idaho National Lab, and I love the question because the key word from a lab perspective we focus on is challenges. And what the lab's designed to do is focus on those infrastructure security and resilience challenges, whether physical or cyber, and provide services to deal with these national and homeland security issues. We have a long-standing relationship with CISA in many, many different areas. And how this all started was because of the relationship that we have with CISA, and particularly with Associate Director Wilkinson. This started with an email late one evening saying, "Hey, could we help with this challenge?" And in our specialization with our development team, and we work on many, many different capabilities that we built for CISA and others, and was to be kind of the in the middle between the grand challenge of CISA, providing capabilities to the greater critical infrastructure community, and people like Tom Moran and the All Hazards Consortium, where they've been building this data framework for many, many years and have lived these challenges with their partnership. So for us, it was a great challenge to be able to operationalize the information that was provided and provide something that can contribute to the COVID-19 outbreak response and recovery, but really has implications for many, many different types of incidents in the future.
All right, Ollie, thanks. We're going to go ahead and move to question number 2, which deals with the innovation. So, Greg, if I may start with you on this one, let's talk about how you address these challenges that we just talked about. If you could tell us more about the app itself and the solutions and benefits it provides to both government and industry. Greg?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Laura. The challenge at hand was providing a capability to really remedy some of the challenges at hand. COVID-19 just provided that opportunity and the right I'll say solution to the problem set. It really brought the advances in technology, whether it was the ESRI hub capabilities of technology that they rolled out 3-4 months ago, where we actually had access to the data. Some of the data that we had tried to put together through some of our regional field offices was then actually collected by the National Governors Association. So it did provide that data set to easily feed into the tool and capability to provide that information, whether it's restrictions of transportation, masks that had to be worn, all those restrictions from going to point A to point B in the solution. So the ask was really from our leadership, Dave Wilkinson, to say, hey, can we provide a solution or a tool, an app that can be leveraged by the community to implement a capability going from point A to point B in an effective, efficient manner. It's all supporting that ESF 14 sector, cross-sector, dependency, interdependency capability that supports our supply chain. So in that instance, it does support both government and industry, but really the focus was on the private sector and how to implement the capability for the truckers, for the private sector entities that leverage goods or provide that services and goods transport from point A to point B.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, Dave, I think Greg did a great job in talking about the vision for this, but did you have anything you wanted to add to this question?
So, no, I think he covered it very well. Innovation is really always the hardest time, right? It's part science, it's part art, and for whatever reason, this particular time in history, we had the right problem, we had the right challenge, we had the right people at the right time together to come up with this idea, and then the right technologists in the background with INL and Greg to actually see how to get this to the next level, and Tom and the AHC with the CISA, right? Everything just came together perfectly in the right mixture of art and science to make this thing happen.
That's right. All right, Dave, thanks so much. And Ollie, you may know that we have 2 more hour-long webinars coming up, one at 2 on operational, and then Wednesday on the technical aspects of it. So I don't want to ask INL to get too much into the specifics of the app just on this call, but did you have anything else that you wanted to add to your team's work behind the innovation here?
The only thing I would say on that is, we always struggle with, in our world, we work on research and development, and we also work on, operational capabilities. So the real challenge here was, to be quite honest, it wasn't a matter of could this be done. It's a matter of will we capture everything, and would it be in a user-friendly type format that can benefit the mobile user and the desktop user. So when the challenge came across, it's a matter of, as Dave Wilkerson said, we had the right people. Everyone that was on the calls, had operational context in their background, and they really understood what the outcome should be, which removes a lot of hurdles when you're trying to develop something and you have a clear outcome. And I think that in terms of the strategy, the innovation is not going to happen unless you have the right players at the table and you have a clear outcome.
Well said, Ollie. Thank you so much. So, Tom, we'll move on to the next slide. And question number 3. Tom? Oh, there we go. Okay, now this one deals with partnerships. So obviously there were a lot of players involved in making this come together. So Dave, if I can start with you, I mean, obviously, other than Idaho National Lab, but can you talk about people you had to talk to, or partnerships that had to be made or that were utilized to make this happen?
So here's what I was talking about before, that really all glory in this one, I think, goes to All Hazards Consortium in the CISA. That began years and years and years ago. And like with many partnerships, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not just because you called someone today. It's built over years and years and years. And that's what AHC has been doing with this, is they've been collecting all the right people that may have some interest in the general subject in the future, so that when I showed up on the scene at the beginning of this, at the beginning of COVID, the partnerships were all there. I just had to pick up the phone and talk to people and listen to Greg McShane and Ollie and Tom. And really very few additional people did we need to rope into this, other than those 3 organizations. We sold it a little bit with FEMA, but they were already so embedded in our operations from previous encounters that I don't know how much more to talk about this. It was all the work that happened over years because of the foresight of the AHC and the CISA and Tom.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. Greg, agree? Anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to echo what Dave said, it's having that foresight and bringing the right people to the table. Early on, we had I was introduced to the All Hazards Consortium through the NIP Challenge, and it was a great capability that they were bringing to the table. They were able to kind of, bridge the gap between, the private sector and government that we really, really liked. And they had a lot of those existing relationships on the private sector, but, we were trying to, brainstorm, how do we roll in the government operations? And they've always been, taking that approach. We want to solve the operational problems and issues that we're having, during an event, during steady state. How can we do this? Because not everything always escalates to that, Stafford Act, level where, there's now all the attention on a big event. Where we're trying to also focus in on is those kind of day-to-day weather type events that don't escalate to that level that we also monitor as well. So it's really solving those operational challenges and problems. Again, mentioned before, it's the recurring issues and challenges we've always have during an event, which is the fuel availability, restoration, flooding, road obstructions, damage assessments. How can we do that, and how can we do that better?
All right. And Ollie, from a strategic point of view, any other partnerships that came into play from your perspective?
No, I think the partnerships were, well defined, and again, that was a matter of, the three main parts to get it done in a very short amount of time to provide some initial value. Being All Hazards Consortium with the data and built over years, as Dave pointed out, our technical capabilities, and obviously CISA's vision on how they're trying to support the overall community. I will say though that nobody in those calls felt like we had all the key partnerships. There are a lot in the transportation community that we were hoping to bring in for the next evolution of the capability. And again, it's called the Commercial Routing Assistance Tool. It's not called the Commercial Routing Answer, because it can always be improved, and already looking at those steps with those strategic partnerships.
All right, Ollie, thanks so much. All right, Tom, question number 4. So we'll talk about planning, and Ollie, I'll direct this one to you. What are the next steps to grow the CRA? What still needs to be addressed, specifically anything that might be in a strategic manner?
Sure. For our part, really, we're going to be a recipient. We can help from a technical perspective on what is possible, and there's a lot that's possible. And then obviously we will rely on the All Hazards Consortium for their partnerships and their data, and also CISA for their strategic vision on the capabilities. And then you start, integrating other partners, stakeholder engagement division, National Risk Management Center within CISA, and then of course outside with other federal agencies. There's a lot, so all those got to be brought in, and what was not included, how it could be included while still maintaining that user-friendly, application, either in a mobile and desktop format.
Okay, and yeah, please.
So this is Nancy Pomerleau, DHS. Right now I work in the National Risk Management Center. So yesterday we had a webinar with several members of the Highway Motor Carrier Council, AASHTO, Transportation Research Board, Department of Transportation, TSA, and a few others to talk through this tool, because it was new when it was released publicly, as Tom mentioned earlier. So I'm working together with them because I handle the transportation sector for CISA, so that we can get some subject matter experts together to look at the tool based on the webinar yesterday and its capabilities, and work collectively to improve it as well for the benefit of people who would actually be the users of the tool. So there's a lot going on at Department of Transportation on this kind of issue during a crisis, if you will, emergency situation. So I just wanted you to know that we are working to bring more subject matter experts together to add to the capability of the tool. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Dave, did you have anything to add, especially as it relates to your vision in growing the tool?
I could talk for probably an hour on the things that we could add to this to have extreme value. But life has been rather busy, right, for the last several months, so I've not gotten past. But a couple of main things that I would like to see added in here, such as road closures and opening, some sort of dynamic way as people use this tool to see what the least congested inbound route is, so that when you do have electric utilities trying to enter back into an area, or other utilities trying to enter back into an area, they have some optimization that actually routes them around the heavy traffic areas, but still allows them to maintain what restrictions are in place on the roads. That I think would be a huge benefit to these companies as they start to enter back into an area. And then when you think about that and integrate it with where the roads are closed because they're flooded, or because there's trees down, or bridges are washed out, that level of integration would be phenomenal to see.
Okay, that sounds good, Dave. Thank you so much. Tom, let's go ahead to the next slide. And that was those were the questions that we had in regards to the strategy behind the tool. So just a quick thank you to Dave, Greg, and Ollie. And Tom, if you want to take Q&A at this point, that'd be great.
Yeah, I thank you, Laura. I think one of the things that became interesting is that the CISA working group, the states, the partners, put together this hub site, and this had data like crazy that was vetted and validated, right? And I think the tool then took it into a, and Ollie, I want to take a second and walk through this for a minute. We've got time to do this, so people know what we're talking about. The tool. Let's show them the tool. We talked about the strategy that led, but how do you go from a portal that has Lord knows how many data sets that are in there? I want to thank Chris McIntosh, Ben Ear, and John Molnar, and the folks that technically worked on the issue. But this is the hub that it pulls from, and then it brings it into the tool like this. So I thought maybe we just take a second and walk through this, and I think it'd be important from a strategic standpoint to know why were the components chosen and organized maybe in the way they were, and maybe we can have just a quick discussion around that for a few minutes, and then we can take some questions. So Ollie, why don't you just walk us through it real quick? I'll route us from LA to Baltimore. Okay.
Sure.
So.
Sure. It's probably important to point out, first of all, that the data right now is at the state level. So if you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, well, if I'm using this in a hurricane and I'm worried about routing from Pensacola to Miami, Florida, what about counties and local? So that's already on the table. There's a lot of discussions that, version 2.0, what could be added, and obviously with our transportation sector partners are going to be key to that discussion. So essentially the map route, when you put the map route in this case, Los Angeles to Baltimore, you'll see at the top there's 4 tabs: map route, state information, detail, and summary. You're in the map now, which uses a Bing application. When you put in the route, it actually gives you, just like if you did a Bing map search on a route, it gives you different options. As you see, as he's clicking the different routes, the summary data on the side is actually updating. So once you have, thinking about which route may be the less restricted based on the summary information, you can then dive into the state information, which is going to provide a bit more detail by state, and also a visualization that kind of shows you from, if you're looking at the bar graph below the map, you'll see that you have the route from California to Maryland, and you see the restrictions. There's a very simple prioritization that's giving you those color schemes behind it, and actually above that in the states, it's kind of giving you a roll up of those that prioritization behind it. Now, right here, you can actually change your route by clicking on different states. If I say I want to go through Louisiana and Arkansas versus going through Oklahoma, I can change the route, and the data will change and update. Without going too far into it, because we invite anybody to go onto the tool. It is live and mess with it. Below that, you see some more at the very bottom, Tom. You'll see the legend, which actually gives you basically the breakdown on the color code and some of the restrictions. Again, so this gives you kind of a quick snapshot on route resistance, I like to call it, getting from point A to point B. I should have also mentioned that in the mapping function, you could put several, you don't have to go back to it, but you could put several destinations. If I'm going to California, to Madison, Wisconsin, to Detroit, to Columbus, Ohio, to Baltimore, you can put that whole route in there. Now, you also have, I think, one of the most powerful pieces of the tool besides the truck routing information. And if Tom hits the drop down up top above the map on the data options on the right side of the screen, you'll see you have the detailed information there. If you go back to state information, you see besides truck routing, you also can hit that drop down and show government actions up to the top, Tom. Right there, truck routing to the left. Yeah, right there. Yeah, so I can hit government actions, and that starts getting to things like, there's the emergency declaration. Are people required to wear masks? Are there limitations on gathering? So now you take that truck routing information with those government actions. Now you're painting a picture of what I'm going to deal with as either an independent trucker or a dispatch center, moving several trucks across the country. And then if you go to the third tab, detailed information, you start getting into the snapshot in detail. Also provides hyperlinks that if you want to look at the California, state driver's license closures, you can click on it and take you to that data source, as Tom's showing you there. And then at the bottom, you also have, if you wanted to generate this into a product, you can actually, at the very bottom, export this into a spreadsheet format and share that. I do want to point out that a lot of time was spent by developers to make sure that this renders appropriately on Apple iPhones, Android devices, and iPads. So you don't get that kind of messed up web look, something that's designed for a desktop. You don't have that issue. And you can actually do the same things we're doing right now in the mobile application. And then the last tab, there's a summary information, which again kind of rolls up the information. And you can actually drill down to each one of these if you require, say, emergency declarations. There you go. Now there's the map. It's right above it. It's showing truck routing government, but it's focused in on emergency declarations. So again, a lot of capability. That the key here is provide a lot of information that's offered by the All Hazards Consortium, and then put that in a user-friendly format that would be applicable to assist an independent trucker or a major company, or say even in a major declaration, be able to move, critical supplies across the country or to very specific locations.
Okay. Ollie, thank you. It just occurred to me we're talking about this tool. We hadn't even shown it yet, so I thought it'd be helpful if we added that. Let's pause it open for questions. Everybody's on an open mic, so I'll just walk down for those of you on the webinar, I'll just walk down the list if you can provide question or comment. So Bill Lescure from DC. Bill, any comments or input, question?
No real input, just, thanks for including me, and this looks like a really useful tool. I'm going to load it up into we have a map library here that hopefully analysts and operators can access this, and when the need comes up, hopefully it'll be at their fingertips. So I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chris McIntosh. Chris and his group were fundamental in building the Esri hub, which powers the data and updates this every day. Chris, any comments or background from a strategy standpoint? I'm sure you've got plenty to offer.
Yeah, thank you for showing this, and thanks for the team at Idaho National Labs for taking that data and turning it into such a great application. I love the ideas of what can be done with this going forward. I've already made some notes to find some of the data that Brick's looking for, and it's just great to see it come together. It'll be really interesting to see how we apply this to other hazards, so the hurricane fleet movement one being first and foremost on my mind as we move into June. So I think this developed for COVID, but has a lot of applications to a lot of challenges that have been around for a long time. It's exciting to see.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Chris. George Eason at Centerpoint. George, comments or questions? Okay. Jeff Placus, New Jersey, PSE&G, Long Island.
Yeah, Tom, it's a really nice, elegant application. I think it dovetails nicely with the early efforts that we made with the open close, the fleet open close routing, which wasn't really a routing tool. This enhances that, and using the two together, it really is something elegant. And again, I think it's going to be something that'll be useful as we approach, major hurricane season, sending assistance down south, up north, to the East Coast from the West Coast, et cetera. So excited to see its applicability. Although I prefer if we don't have to use it, because that means we don't have an event taking place. But when we do, I think it's going to be a game changer for at least for many of us in the utility industry.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. Randy Knight, AEP.
Yeah, I'm on, and I echo those comments. I think it's a wonderful tool. It'll be really helpful as we move crews around in the mutual assistance world. So I think it'll be very helpful, and I'm excited to use it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Richard Fimble. Richard, comments or questions?
No, this time I think it's great. Of course, I've been looking at it for a couple of weeks now. It's exciting to see. Great. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Shad Hedrick, Dominion Energy. Shad, comments or questions? Okay, Shana Conley from Eversource Energy. Shana, comments or questions?
It looks great. I don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay, very good. Sherry Stone from the Fuel Sector, Petroleum Market Association. Sherry, comments or questions?
Yeah, just a few. The site is great, and I really, our members are loving it, and it's, I know you all put a lot of work into it. But I wanted to ask, hours of service are not listed on here, is that correct? Like hours of service waivers for drivers? I believe that's the case.
So I think this is Ali Gagnon. I believe you are correct.
So that would just that might be a good thing to add at some point. But if you do, just be mindful that there's federal and then there are regional waivers for the hours of service, and some of the states also require their own waiver. So you have some states that require having their own and some that do not. And then I also wanted to ask, are federal and regional waivers included in this in general?
I believe it was just state.
Okay. So that would be great.
Yeah, I would say this in the webinar we did yesterday. I would say this, that if the data exists and in the format that you just put out, it can be integrated. That's our operating principle.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, because that would be
the current data is coming from American Trucking Association primarily, and if the state defers to the federal waiver, then that waiver is the one being shown. If the state supersedes or is more restricted than the federal waiver, then that is what's being shown.
Okay. And so, do you have any? So I think you said you do not have any category of federal or regional waivers in here at this point. Is that correct?
It's just a waiver that the state has mandated applies in that state.
Okay.
So,
hey, Chris, hold on, Sherry, hold on. Chris, do we not have Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration waivers in here?
They are, many of the states, their waiver is the Federal Motor Carriers Association waiver.
Okay, so Sherry, I know
if they have a more restrictive waiver than that. So the data is the most restrictive waiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I know our folks look at, whether or not there are any federal or regional, just in general. But I understand this is different. So I'm just trying to figure out how.
Yeah, Sherry, we can circle back and confirm, because I know we were pulling FMCSA declarations. We were pulling waivers from all over the place. And what Chris is saying, instead of having 5 waivers in there, what's the most restrictive? That's the one we used, right?
Yeah, understood.
So now going forward, right, this is where the planning comes in. Going forward, I know hours of service is key for the fuel sector, right? So we'll come back and revisit that one so we make sure we got it. Yeah.
And I also just wanted to let all of you know, in case you don't already, and this is, of course, related more to the fuel truck, the drivers of fuel. There is a great book that was put out, an app that was put out by DOE and API, the American Petroleum Institute. It's called the Oil and Natural Gas Industry Preparedness Handbook, and it lists all the various waivers that can occur on the road. It also has, for the full chain, which would not be of interest, but that might be a useful tool for going forward. I don't know, but I'm happy to send that link to you.
Sherry, yeah, if you could send that to us, that'd be great. Yeah, we want to make sure we're as much as we can encompass those efforts already underway. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, I think Sherry's bringing up a great point. This is John Moner here, Tom, if you don't mind. I think Sherry's bringing up a great point, though, because we could almost develop a map specifically just for the fuel sector and all the different types of waivers and declarations that that document she's talking about, I think it's about 30 pages long of various options that they have that we can represent on this chart. So that's an interesting topic area, Tom. And like I said, we may want to take a look at that and develop a specific map just for that industry.
Well, and for those who don't know, Sherry and I work together. Sherry is a key data provider into the picture. Her association of fuel distributors gets access to information and shares it into the CISA. So let's follow up on that, John, and circle back, because fuel is going to be, fuel is one of those things, nobody misses it until it's gone, and it's like panic, right? So we want to stay on top of that one. Last comment and question here, Wally Malia from Edison Electric Institute. Wally, any comments or questions?
Tom, just want to commend the team for putting together what looks like a really useful tool, and glad that this is getting out in the wild after all this time.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments or questions from anyone we missed? Might be on a remote phone or whatever.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Dave Jones. Just a quick input, which is really exciting about this app too, is we're working with the National Weather Service on flood, inundation, and visualization modeling. So to get some of output from this tool into GeoCollaborate to share, I think will be a really good combination to get disparate data sets, and we can also pull services from the tool itself. So this is really an exciting move, and great job to everybody who put this together.
Okay.
Hey, Tom Zolli, to that point, so for example, here in Florida, 20 miles of I-75 on Alligator Highway was closed yesterday because of wildfires. You would not have seen that in the tool today. So that evolution is going to be key. And Tom, I forgot to mention also that we are keeping analytics on this. So as of yesterday, just in a short release, we've had, I think, over 3,500 users already pretty much spread across the country, and about a 70% desktop 27% mobile, and the rest, a few amount, are tablet users. So it's being used.
Nice. That's great, Ollie. Very good. Laura,
Hey,
that's
Tom.
it for the questions.
Tom?
I'll turn it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Tom, this is Marvin. Hey, is anybody given any thought to military applications for, like, say, the U.S. Transportation Command?
Ollie or Rick?
This is Ollie. As a data source, or as a partner to provide it?
I think both. I think there may be applications here because I'm actively involved in a lot of military things. So I did see where the Transportation Command might be able to use this and provide information as well.
And maybe the Army Corps of Engineers too.
Yeah, right.
There are no. Dave Wilkinson here. That's a really good idea. I mean, one of the background thoughts that went into my head when I was trying to envision this, solutioneer this, was a thing called a MACU, which is a military term for mobility, counter-mobility, obstacle overlay.
Right.
Essentially, a fancy way of visually displaying how fast troops can move across any type of terrain, which goes directly to what Transportation Command would be worried about. A lot of the other stuff I think is already baked in, but they may be able to help us find additional data sources that we may not otherwise have. So I think that's a good avenue, and we should probably reach out to them and make sure they're aware, and see if they want to be involved in helping determine the next iteration in spiral development steps that we take.
Great. Okay. You want me to talk to Tom about that, or Dave? You could send me some information through Tom.
Yeah, if you could work with Tom on that, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Very
great.
Good.
Thank you.
Lastly, let me share my screen. Yesterday we had a phone call, and this is central to where this can go. So on the left, we had a number of other data sets or opportunities we could move to. This work group will have to set a priority, but oversized, overweight data, bridges and tunnels, truck parking lots, state 511 systems, construction, turn-by-turn directions, incorporation of the national routes, truck weight and size, contraflow, that was an interesting one, the national network of, I guess there's a national network that provides approved roads for 53-foot trucks, DOT routing assistance hotline, which we use now working with federal motor carriers, imagery, bridge limitations and closures, hazmat, state truck restrictions, state DOT data streams, and truck configurations. Wow, there's a lot of potential options. The idea is to pick one or two and zero in around it, build a use case for it. So that's what this group will be looking to do over time. And as you can see, some of the organizations on that were AASHTO, who's been a national state planning group for state transportation officials, the Transportation Research Board, DHS CISA, Federal Motor Carriers, DOT, CISA, the state DOTs, TSA, American Trucking, National Tank Truck Carriers, FEMA Logistics. So there's been a lot of interest around this. So the trick is getting small and stay focused and produce things that solve operational problems. That's the whole point, right? So just to give you guys a synopsis of yesterday's call, we'll use that in our planning going forward. So Laura, I'm going to, unless we have anything else, I'm going to turn it back over to you and we can do final comments and wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And not only would I like to thank our panelists, Dave, Greg, Ollie, especially Dave, who took an hour from his vacation to be with us today, but also it's so neat to just listen to everyone on the call, Marvin's comments, Nancy's comments, Sherry, and everyone collaborating together so that we can increase the capabilities of the tool. So thanks to everyone for calling in. This is part 1 of 3 about the tool. This dealt with strategic level. At 2 o'clock today, we have a Zoom call, which will go over the operational aspect of the tool. And then next Wednesday, the 20th at 11, there's also a Zoom call that deals with the technology behind it. And we heard from Dave Jones today. We also have a Zoom call as part of our business resiliency series on GeoCollaborate on Tuesday the 19th at 4:30. So a lot going on. We invite you to join us on these calls, and you'll see on the screen now the URL. I know you guys have probably all seen this already, but for the tool. And that's all I have today. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope we see you at 2 o'clock. And in the meantime, stay safe. Thanks, everyone.